What's up, everybody? This is Josh from Josh Kid Films. This is part 2 of the color grading tutorial that I talked about in part 1. Part 1 we talked about grading Canon FD lenses and vintage lenses in general. This is part 2. This is grading modern lenses that I've been using on weddings. All the weddings I've shot on the Pocket 4K, I have used modern lenses. But this season coming up in September, I'm going to be doing all FD. So that'll be really interesting to see, and it'll be interesting to see if I'm going to continue to grade weddings the way that I have been grading them, that you'll see in this tutorial, or if I will go more to the style of part 1 and the way that I tend to grade these FD lenses. So I'll let you guys know, stay tuned, and I'll probably come back with a different tutorial about how I'm grading the weddings once I've switched to the FD. So anyway, let's get into this. We are in DaVinci Resolve, and I'm on my media page here. I've got a few clips that I've dragged to my desktop that I'm going to show you guys and grade. And then I've dragged them over here into my media pool. So let's go to the edit window, and you guys can just kind of see. They're not very long. I just kind of laid them out here just so we could look at them during the grading process. But I did want to show them to you. Let's go ahead and go over here to the color page and get started. In part 1, we talked about how I like to define a look for the project that I'm working on. And so we did 3 nodes on the first one. And we used, on the second node, we used Film Convert, which is a plugin, an external plugin that simulates film stock. I don't do that for weddings with these modern lenses. Instead of using Film Convert, what I use on node 2 here is this, let me find it here, the Blackmagic Natural Rec 709. This is the Buttery LUT. It's by Buttery Films. And it's really nice. It kind of adds a smooth highlight roll off, and it has nice colors. It corrects a few of the colors that are wrong with the Blackmagic version. And then in the same way as part 1, I go ahead and I add a color shift LUT to this third node. It just depends. Sometimes I use the drive, the one that I used in part 1, but for the most part I like this 6960 LUT. It's from the, I can't remember the name. It's like a bunch of letters, and I can put it in the link, but just off the top of my head I don't know it. We'll come down here to the key page, and we will drop that by at least half, maybe more once we get going here. But let's go ahead and start this. I can already tell, and I wanted to use this first clip here just because I didn't really nail the white balance in this bathroom. You know, a lot of times bathrooms have a really warm lighting, and so sometimes we can be kind of lazy. We don't switch as cold as we probably should, but it's a little bit off. But the beautiful thing about Blackmagic Raw is that it's really, really easy to change, and I'm not really sure why it just shifted me up on my ISO, but let's just bring it back down to 400, which is the native, which is going to yield a good result. Let's start by trying to go to 35 here. It's still a little warm, maybe 33. It looks okay, and then I'll bring the tint up here just a little bit. And now I want to go back a little bit here, maybe not that much. Okay, 3400 looks good to me. And on weddings, I'm not really doing as much as I was with part 1. I want these to look natural and pretty. You know, some people when they grade weddings, they go for a really cinematic kind of like stylized, like deep shadows in the skin tones and weird funky colors in the skin tones. Like, I believe that when you grade a wedding, that the bride wants to feel beautiful. She wants it to be timeless and classic for the most part. A lot of times trends can go in and out of style, and so you watch your wedding film back in a year and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I did that. So we kind of try to stick to like a clean and beautiful, airy look. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring down the contrast just a little bit here on the lift, just down to 0 here on the scopes. And typically when I'm grading this, I don't really push the highlights higher than this line. I like a little bit of room. And I can see right here on the scopes it's saying that my blues, like I'm still a little bit warm, so we'll just kind of micro adjust that right here so that the scopes match. And I like the way that looks. I might even bring these highlights down just a little bit. And I like the where the gamma is here. And so on that clip, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I would do. And you can kind of see if you go up here and you disable this and turn it back on, you can kind of see what that LUT's doing. It's not super drastic or super stylized, but it's a nice clean look for this. And so let's keep going. One thing I'll do here, since I'm not really doing any stabilization, is I'm going to hit equals to just copy that. And it's obviously way off now, but the two nodes here we're going to use, so I'm just going to reset that one. And the main reason this looks so whack is because of these ISO values and the white balance values. So I'm just going to default it back to 1. We'll go up here to about 5500, and let's look. That's looking pretty nice, maybe a little cold. Let's go up just a little bit more maybe. And I'm going to go all the way up here to 6,000. Some of this is just kind of trial and error. So that's really pretty. I shot this shot with the Mamiya 80mm medium format lens, and it's a little softer than a traditional modern lens, but it's definitely sharper than the Canon FD. It's kind of got a Zeiss-like quality, so you can tell it's kind of smooth but still sharp, and it looked really good on this bride and this wedding. But if you look down here in my scopes, it's still telling me that I'm a little bit cold. So let's go up even more. And that's starting to look pretty good. Sometimes you can, just decide kind of where you want to adjust the white balance. It's saying I'm a little cold. I think that's more from the color shift LUT than the actual temperature. I like the way that looks. So that one thing about vintage lenses is you can kind of push the contrast a little more. They kind of have a little bit, it's a little bit low contrast compared to a modern lens. So I find myself on like Mamiya and FD, I'm pushing the contrast just a little bit more. Let's bring up the gamma here a little bit and that down. And that looks really good to me. It's really pretty. But has a little bit of a stylized look to it, but not so much that it's super drastic. And, editing weddings is just not as crazy as some of the narrative stuff you could work on. But let's go ahead and we'll shift that there. We did equal to copy the grade. I'm going to reset that. This is now way too dark. Let's go up to 400, and that looks pretty good. It looks a little cold. It looks cold here too. Let's go here. And one thing, if you're copying grades over, you might say 7,000 seems really high to get the right temperature here. And I agree, but it does look better. And so let's see here. Let's look at our scopes. It looks like we're a little blue on the scopes. So we'll push it just a little bit there. And we had sunlight right on them here, so they're a little bit warmer. Anyway, I'm going to bring it down. And this is also with the Mamiya. Bring that up just a little bit. Let's see. I don't want the highlights in his shirt to start blooming or getting a little too bright here. And you know what? It's interesting because she seems like she's a little darker than he is, just because he's kind of blocking her a little bit. One thing you could do if you really wanted to get super detailed here is go ahead and just mask him out a little bit. So we'll do what we did in the part 1. We're going to just add a node here, and we're going to draw a mask with our pen tool. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit and kind of just go right around him like this. And then we're going to go here to the tracker. We're going to play it through. Not a ton of movement in that shot, so it wasn't hard for the tracker to do it, but we'll add a little bit of a softness here just to kind of blur the edge, and you can kind of see what it's doing right there when you do that. But We'll just bring the gain down here just a little bit because his shirt's kind of bright, and you can kind of see what that's doing right there. It balances them out a little bit more so they're kind of the same brightness, and I really like the way that looks. Looks good. Maybe bring this down just a hair and up a little bit there, and I really like that. It's clean and looks really nice. Okay, let's go to this next one. Instead of copying it, because I can already tell it's going to be pretty different, let's do what we did where we just copied that LUT, copied it over, and then copied this color shift, copied that over. And we are already way too blue here, even though our scopes are saying it's pretty balanced. It looks blue to me, and that's mainly in the shadows. One thing I'll do here, let's go ahead and tweak this a little bit. Let's see what it looks like if we go up here. So this is one of those times where just the normal temperature adjustments, it doesn't seem to quite do what we want it to do. It still looks a little funky. So I'm going to actually come here on the shadows, and I'm going to balance these out just a little bit here on the scope, right here. And you can see that made our shot a little warm. So now I'm going to come back here and add back a little bit of the blue shift right there, and that is definitely more balanced than it was. We'll bring down some contrast here, and we'll bring up the gamma. And one thing about this shot, since we're kind of shooting with the bright sky behind them, you can kind of determine, and this is the nice thing about Blackmagic Raw, you can kind of determine if you want to bring any of that back, with this highlights right here. I don't like the way that looks with all of it back, but maybe we bring just like 20 of it back just so it brings in a little bit more detail up here in the sky. And I'm going to bring her up a little bit and maybe add a little bit more contrast there. Sometimes when you bring the highlights down, you want to compensate a little bit on the gain. And I like the way that looks. Looks nice and consistent with what we're doing here. And then we'll go to this one. We'll go ahead and copy this one with the equal sign, just because they're very similar as far as brightness and everything. And that already is looking really good. Let's see here. One thing you could do here, if you wanted to bring back some of that sky for more of an effect shot, let me brighten this up just a little bit real quick. Okay, and so here we'll do a mask right here, and we're going to go around and just kind of grab the sky, go around them. And you can't do this super drastic or it'll be really obvious, but let's go up a little bit in our softness, and then we're going to pull this down a little bit just to bring it back. Maybe bring the gamma down a little bit. That's kind of cool. You can play with the temperature if you want it to feel a little warmer. Maybe a little bit more to the magenta. And then you could also mess around with the saturation. You wanted to pull a little bit more out of the sky. That looks cool. So here's the difference. It's before and that's after. And you probably want to track that mask. Here, we'll adjust this real quick. And then we'll do the tracker here. Play it through. That looks good. And let's look again. Maybe brighten them up just a little bit. How detailed you want to get with your shot is really up to you. I mean, you can come in here and you could individually mask them and adjust them separately from everything. I like the way this shot looks. I think it looks really nice, so I'm going to leave it. Let's go here, and we won't copy the grade just because it's really different. We're just going to copy that LUT on this one, and we're going to copy this LUT here, and that's already looking pretty good. Kind of go here. And we got a lot of light sources here, so when you have so many color temperatures in your shot, sometimes you kind of just want to try to see, you're aiming for their skin tone to look natural as much as you can. I mean, if they're in a light like this, obviously that's affected by the red light that's on his face. But try to find it when it's more of a natural. And I like the skin tone there. I think it looks good. I think it looks natural. So I'm good with the white balance here. And this is where getting it right in camera really makes this super easy. And I'll put a little bit of noise reduction here just because I can see it in his jacket. Maybe 10 here. Yeah, and that looks nice and smooth. Looks good. Yeah, I like that a lot. So I know I kind of flew through all 6 of these clips, but I kind of wanted to do that on purpose to show you how easy it is to grade a wedding and just work with this footage when you have something like the buttery let that's just a really good starting point to use. I use it for a lot of different projects, and it's a great way just to kind of have a great starting point to work from, even without this let. I mean, that looks really good. It's really got a nice roll off to it. I can't recommend it enough. I just want to say I get a lot of messages from people just like, oh, can you please send that to me for free? And I just would say, don't be that guy, because I know the guy that made it, Mateo, he's a great guy, and they put a lot of work into it. And when somebody puts a lot of work into something, I don't think it's really cool to steal it. Just let me just say that real quick. And so please don't message me asking for it for free, because I will not send it to you. I will send you the link to their website, and that's what you should do anyway. So it's pretty easy to go through Resolve and grade for weddings with this buttery let. What you do here really will affect kind of the look and feel of what you're doing. And that's where you can kind of get creative with it. Oh, sorry, here we go. If you want a different feel altogether, if you wanted it to be a little bit more stylized and less classic, I see that looks really nice too. You could always bring this up to a higher value to where it starts to look a little different. Maybe bring this down a bit. I mean, that really becomes up to your creative, discretion. But I kind of find for what I do, the kind of half amount is a nice fit. But go ahead and play, with some different color shifts and stylized looks to kind of see what you like and see something that works for you. I try to stay consistent between clips as much as I can with what LUTs I'm using, just because I find that helps it all to kind of feel cohesive as a project. But anyway, hopefully that was helpful and kind of just showed you a little bit of my process when I grade for weddings. And it's a little bit different than part one, but it's really quick and easy. So when you've got hundreds of clips that you're going from, that you've put in a cinematic film or something like that, it makes the process a little bit quicker. And so that's always good. One thing that I will do occasionally, on top of all this work that we've already done, is in 16, I believe it is, they introduced this adjustment clip option, which is really similar to adjustment layers in Premiere. So every now and then, most of the time, especially for like a trailer or a cinematic film, I'll come in here to this adjustment clip, and let's go here. I like this clip as an example to show you what it's doing. And this is where I'll add, if I wanted to try to add like film convert, what I would do is I wouldn't do it the same way as in part one. I'm basically just wanting the grain of it. So what we would do, I'm not even going to tell it what camera I want, because it's going to be super, super contrasted, and I'm really just after the grain of it. So I'm going to go back to my Fuji stock here, and I'm going to dial this way down to like 20%, maybe like 50% here, and like 20% here. And it just is going to give me just a little bit more of a vibe, especially when you play it back. You'll kind of see that grain. Occasionally, and this is stuff that, you don't have to do, but it's just kind of interesting to play with. I like this looks. Magic Bullet Looks has a cool look in here. You can kind of go in, if you didn't use any type of filtration when you shot it, and you want to kind of replicate a little bit of diffusion, you can come in here, you can throw some diffusion on it. So anyway, you can come down here to like black mist, which is going to be kind of like the pro mist look, and you'll see here it's pretty drastic. You don't necessarily want it like that intense, but I found it's easier instead of trying to adjust the strength here. You can come in here and you can drop this way down, and it kind of just gives a nice, a little softer feel to it. Not necessary, but kind of cool. And so I think that the adjustment layer here is actually definitely adding some vibe to this, and I'll turn it on here. So that's with it. That's without it. Yeah, you can see it kind of just softens it up a little bit, and I like what that's doing there. But anyway, that's kind of how I go through a wedding, and so hopefully that was helpful. Y'all feel free to like and subscribe, because we're going to be doing all sorts of lens tests and color grading tips and all sorts of things that you guys would be interested in. So make sure to check that out on our channel. Hope you have a great night.